Morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, whichever time zone you're in. My name is Brian Quinney, Senior Applications Expert within the Infrastructure Division here at IMAGINiT Technologies. First off, Civil 3D 2023 doesn't even look right just looking at it, but here we are. There's some really nice things, really nice additions to complement what we've seen, changes going on in previous versions. So welcome, get comfortable, take a load off, take a look at what we've got. There's going to be many, many more features that cover more than what I will be showing you, but I just pulled some out of the list so we can go over. First off, about me, I've been in the industry over 25 years, alumnus of Grambling State University in Louisiana, affiliate member, a few other little notes here, and I'm coming up on 5 years here in August with the IMAGINiT team. Great set of people to work with, okay? And born and raised here in Texas. So a little bit about IMAGINiT Technologies. We are an Autodesk Platinum value-added reseller with quite a few years of experience, over 40 years of experience. Many satisfied customers. Many of you on the call here with us, others that are not quite our customers or not yet, I'll say it at least that way. We are the largest services partner with Autodesk, and a lot of other tidbits there about our team, support team, advocacy, everything. It's a great team to work with here. In talking about things that we do, what we do, we help engineering-driven companies pinpoint different issues, problems, processes, do a bit of streamlining, see where they want to go, and map out and chart directions to get them there for the purposes of gaining productivity, employee retention, giving employees a great set of tools to work with, increasing profit margins, so forth. A lot of other things that we assist with. Okay, broken out by different ways of how we get there, consulting and professional solutions, different areas that we work with in the different divisions. There's buildings, infrastructure, media and entertainment, reality capture, a lot more, and manufacturing, can't forget those guys. All right, a lot of data management, facilities management, all that sort of thing behind the scenes, okay? But today for the webcast, for everything that we'll be going over, has to do with the Civil 3D 2023 new features, okay? These are the items I'm going to be highlighting. Some of them I'll show directly, others kind of dig in and talk over, discuss. You'll notice that this is a wide range of topics. There's no one focus, whereas we're used to seeing maybe a particular focus of just corridor functionality, and it's a litany of items that are specific to that, or something about gravity networks, pressure networks. It's a little bit of a lot of it, okay? Things down to the API, working in Dynamo. There'll be a little bit on that later on, but corridors, subassemblies, performance enhancements, let's go. First off, my favorite, this is grading optimization. This has been a very interesting feature, to put it mildly, of Civil 3D, where when working in site development, we need to kind of get out of the way of manually doing a lot of site grading that covers the overall setup. You still find functionality or need for using specific grading uses of the module for grading and feature lines, manually doing it within Civil 3D in terms of your criteria sets and everything. But what the grading optimization does is been taking a lot of that heavy lifting out of the way by getting us the most optimal setup based on certain parameters we put in place. First off, the first item I want to talk about here has been the addition of the Help Center, okay? So previously, we had the tools to be able to access our features, but now we have a Help Center button, which is very helpful. See what I did there? Where When you access that, it opens up this panel here in the workspace to allow you to see the workflow, jump to some live links, videos, other information to kind of help guide you along and get you familiar with the grading optimization, as well as inclusion of sample files. Okay. Another addition or change that has happened with grading optimization occurs with non-collinear feature lines, which means when this information is returned from the grading optimization, it doesn't duplicate your feature lines. It takes into account the same feature lines from that went into it. Trying to figure out how to best say that. So it minimizes a lot of program instability that may happen from these objects occurring in the same site in the same space. Okay, so that is a huge improvement. First off, what I want to do with this space here, I've got this set up. I want to talk about this here since I'm discussing grading optimization, is that I've got a couple of items here in terms of my grading limits. Okay, I've got an inner limit for the whole site, set some parameters in place. This may be new for some of you who have not delved into this feature in the previous release. This is some very good stuff, and it's accessible through your tool palette. So assignments are easy to assign to your object and the geometry within the drawing. For being able to assign various parameters, building pads, zones, low points, drain lines, and the like. So in the optimization, I'm going to jump in there. I've already got some overall setups going. For those who've seen this before, it looks a little different. There's been some cleanup in terms of how the grading optimization is arranged. We've got the progress meter that's been updated to give you a better sense of what things look like in terms of where is it in the optimization. Usually it hangs around between 0 and 10% for a long time, but that depends on your site. You'll notice in here now when we optimize, and notice I did jump in without having to set any parameters or anything. We've got some retriangulation going. It gives you the progress, shows us what's going on. And I did kind of move over. Excuse me, my optimization just kind of got out of my way there for a moment. Let's see if I go back in there. All right, let's try that again. All right, in that optimization, okay, everything's moved over here to a panel for the optimization to be able to allow you to make certain determinations, adjustments, be able to reveal things going on within your feasibility charts and graphs. Okay, so if I want to take a look at my convergence plots, now they're accessed with a simple icon over here on the side. Okay, and as I mentioned, there's the progress down below showing what's going on at what time. There's also a notification center that comes up when there are errors or problematic parts that may happen during an iteration of the process. Okay, I'll go ahead and stop that there. Don't need to send the optimization back, but that's a nice reorganization of the grading optimization feature. There was a lot of guesswork that went on in terms of what we were looking at in the progress meter, so that definitely helps clear that up. The steps you'll find in there are the start, prepare, retriangulate, pre-check, and optimize, so you'll know what's going on whenever. Okay, that notification center and this ribbon button on the home tab, you'll hear about this being mentioned, or you'll see it by default when you jump into it. When looking at that home tab, let me tell you a little something about this guy here. It's not going to jump to the tools. It just lets you know whether it's installed or not and where to actually go. So ladies and gentlemen, please still go to the Analyze tab in order to run the optimization. Okay, don't let that fool you. All right, jumping ahead, this was a little bit about what we just saw in terms of where we're looking at the optimization panel. So I did get a little ahead of myself. All right. So that's grading optimization. Next, we'll talk about pressure networks, fit and finish. A couple of different additions or enhancements that have gone on with this. One, which I really like, is being able to search for your parts when you're adding pipes. For those of us who have very lengthy parts lists, we may find it easier to just search by keyword when adding a part, okay? There's also some grip editing and the profile view improvements, a few other things there. Give me a second, let me jump over here and start talking about a couple of these. That first one had to do with when adding my pipes. If I had a long parts list here, and I am in the upper left, I have a short list here, but the search for keyword shows up top, allowing you to start typing matching parameters or namings to your pipe so it can jump right to what fits that criteria. Okay, so that's a really big help. I've seen some very long and exhaustive parts lists that function better when you can easily find what you're looking for, okay? I've got right here in this profile view, and jumping to talking about property sets for a minute. For those of you who work with property sets, you can attach some additional information about parts that are in your drawing. I've got a label style here that says, I want to know who the owner of this water line is, for instance. And it's got a placeholder really right now because it is not assigned. The addition that's happened here is for 2023, there is a functionality of saying when you assign it in plan view, it will automatically assign to the pipe so it will show up in your profile labels. So for instance, I'll select my pipe, okay? And in my properties, jump to my extended data where I'll add that property set for the owner. Now I'd already pre-populated it with municipality X, okay, for whoever that may be. So then when I go back over to my profile view, I think I'm either missed the wrong pipe or, haha, my first bungle. Funny how that shows up when you're practicing this sort of thing and you need it to show. Okay, give me just a sec. Let me verify something in here. In my label component, I'll go to property sets. Yep, I've got the uppercase. Everything looks right. It's interesting. It didn't like it. Wow. Well, that's number one. I'll start doing a count on myself here. Let me just make sure that that pressure pipe did get it assigned properly. Okay. Doesn't look like it took in there. Now, while I leave that up, let's go see. There it is. Okay. I may have bailed out before doing my correct assignment on that, so my apologies on that. Okay, so the information gets populated automatically once you have assigned the property set, and I just kept it simple, just looked at the owner of this for any labeling purposes, okay, or identification. You're also able to follow different profiles in a pipe run using your overrides. Okay, so there's that feature that when looking at your pipe runs, profiles, when doing your overrides, you're actually able to follow profiles, different profiles. So that's pretty helpful for when there are exceptions to certain areas, okay? Being able to say from this area, this station to this station, don't refer to the overall reference profile. Use this other one instead. Okay, so that's a pretty slick feature, actually. All right. Rail. I know a lot of you do not work with the Rail component. This has been there for several iterations, and there have been massive improvements each time for each release. However, a new one for this, in which I'm questionable as to why it didn't show up before, I guess the functionality or the need. We start with the need first, then get the functionality in. There's the English or US catalogs, as well as a conversion script now. So you're able to convert XLS or spreadsheet formatted specifications to be able to generate a catalog. Okay, so a couple of things that occur here with Rail. If I hop back over to one of my drawings, and it doesn't matter because I'm not about to draw out some Rail. In the Rail, when assigning your turnout catalog, similar to pressure pipe networks, we're able to load, you manually load your catalog here. It's not chosen somewhere else. And now we have a number of additional catalogs. Used to be before, it was just France and generic metric. Okay, now we have US, imperial, and metric. And a key here is that it must match the units of your drawing. For instance, if I try to load this metric, I'm presented with this error, okay, that it must match the unit. So there is a check going on. I will load the imperial, however, lets me know that it's loaded, what's in use. And there's also a new functionality for this, which allows you, instead of unloading your catalog, which can cause problems, it allows you to replace it, okay? Of course, there are some caveats behind the scenes in terms of what occurs in the catalog that's common between what's getting replaced and what replaces it, okay? But it keeps all of that geometry in place and all assignments within, all right? So loading that, and you're ready to go. Further, you have the CANT information labeling, which does apply with your alignment labeling style collection. So there's now an additional feature there for being able to identify CANT information within the alignment. So that's pretty helpful. Another feature that a lot of advanced users use, for instance, has to do with working with the GUIDs or GUIDs with corridors and their corridor solid property sets. Okay, so that's been expanded to allow the APIs to backtrack and refer back to solids that were generated within regions, any applied subassemblies as well, and looking at unchanged handles for any region numbers that differ. So previously, the handles had changed, but now the changes remain in place for you. Okay, so that minimizes a lot of confusion, a lot of application issues that may arise when things start changing behind the scenes. Corridor targeting. This is a really nice feature I like, that I've really taken a liking to. First off, there's tab separated interface for targeting your surfaces versus your alignments and profiles. So if we go take a look at our corridor targeting, we've got this corridor that hasn't had the daylighting applied to it that I added to it. So if I do jump into my corridor properties, and yes, I like going through the whole parameters corridor property tab. If I look at my targets for this region, the reorganization of this is now in tabs. Okay, this was done actually as of last release. But in here, if I'm looking at my surfaces, let's start with that. I have a pull down to be able to set the target for all of my surface targets here. Okay, you can choose them here as well. So you can manually select, set all, or set all up here. Same thing. For my offsets and elevations, here's an additional interesting feature here. So for my offsets, I can point to layers or point to specific objects within layers. Okay, so before what we had done was had the ability through the pick box to manually pick on screen what your objects are. But if you have a dedicated layer for your targets, let's think drain lines. Okay, so not that this is a storm drain, let's assume this was like the center line for anything that has to do with our low points. Actually, here's one better. Here's a swale. So if I look at what information is in that layer, it shows me there's 4 entities on that layer. Okay, and again, they need to be feature lines, polylines, and survey figures, or survey figures rather. So if I look at that, this object shows up just showing me the entities exposed within that layer. Okay, we can choose any of the objects or all of them and say, look at all objects that are in that layer and use them as targets. Okay, so to be able to just choose that, I'll choose anything that's in that layer or gets added after the fact will automatically be considered a target, and my daylight, when talking about with targeting, will set to that with object. Okay. Otherwise, on the left, you have your alignments or pipe to target and which side. So we've been doing that. This one's newer. Okay. So pretty slick stuff there. Actually, I did want to go back in and set that target. Don't want to forget that. All right. Also, something you'll notice or may not notice, because I don't have anything that's going to generate a whole lot of errors, he says with his fingers crossed, is that when working with your corridors or any other objects that bring up information in the panorama, when you have those long exhaustive lists of errors, let's say I forgot to set my surface target, a long list of errors for representing every station would show up. Well, that used to take a long time depending on the complexity of your corridor. Well, now that interface, that's moved a lot faster. Okay, so being able to populate that, it really doesn't hang the display, nothing like that. It really snaps through pretty quickly. So I'll wipe out any proof of that existing right there and we'll move along. Okay. So being able to filter your objects out within your corridor targeting is very new. The dynamically targeting layers, very good stuff there. Let's talk about Project Explorer. There's some enhancements that has been done here in terms of your tables and reports. And that's with the customization of having text summaries and notes in your tables and the sums or your totals as well, and that they're dynamic. Okay, so keep in mind that your Project Explorer has been a kind of modeless or headless operation going on in the forefront, but you can still navigate around in your drawing. When you make a change in your drawing graphically, it's going to be reported in the reports and tables. Okay, and you can specify row heights. It's gotten a lot better in terms of appearance. Sometimes some of the information either is found lost in a large cell or it is minimized and unclear within a smaller cell. Another object or new option is the compare to functionality, where when I want to take a look at some information, I can compare it to other types. For instance, being able to compare point groups, blocks, and parcels to feature lines. So those will now be in there as well to be compared to. So let me jump backwards. And I want to show these points so I can show some relevance here of this site. I want this field survey to actually show up because maybe I want to see something that has to do with the relevance or the relationship between these trail points that are going to be overridden for this new site. Okay, so I have a feature line here for the site of this building, the school actually. And I want to look at this through the Project Explorer. In here, I'm going to look at the point groups. Okay, so the one I'm interested in is the one I just moved to the top, which is field survey. And the point number I'm looking for, I believe, is 533. Let's move that out of the way and we can verify that. Yes, 533, this guy right here. So once I look for that, locate it, 533, we'll look at some of the properties of that one that just sits there, okay? Typical point properties, nothing you haven't seen before in there. Northing, easting, and all that. But I can compare it to different features within the drawing, okay? Alignments, surfaces, of course. But there's a feature line I want to take a look at in that school site and say, well, with that boundary, let's look at some information. Now that elevation is 204 and some change. So I'll scroll all the way over to the right. And I'll move slow because I'm not sure how it's updating on your end. And I'll look at the compared elevation to the feature line, okay? So the offset, the compared offset is this. This is the difference between those points, okay? So before we've had alignments and surface data you can compare to, now we have feature line data we can compare to as well. Okay. For those users who have delved into working with the subassembly composer, getting some very complex situations on manually working with your subassemblies, there's an additional feature, the auxiliary curve. It's similar, or compares rather, to the auxiliary line and point objects, whereas you call out the tessellation, the 2 points you want to define your curve, 2 points, whether it's parabola, 3 points, what have you. So there's that new object in there. The other change that has occurred for the subassembly composer is that, similar to what happens in the regular drawing environment, you get that little asterisk next to the PKT name when you're working to let you know of any unsaved changes. So there's a lot of continuity that has occurred behind the scenes with subassembly composer, as well as a lot of different features within Civil 3D to kind of follow the same naming convention and program understandability, how everything ties. You'll notice the icons as well in different places, surfaces, alignments, and everything is even more continuous than we're used to seeing, okay? Project Explorer is an example, for instance, able to identify your objects by the very familiar icons and what you're comparing to, and so forth. So jumping back there for that, if I'm looking in there, you'll see that the ease of space is because our ability to understand the icons, and even when comparing to, if I'm looking at something like alignments, I see the same similarities between the different icons of whether it's offsets, it's curved returns, or main alignments. Okay, enough of that. A lot more performance enhancements. I love how this version moves a lot smoother than even 2022, and that was a pretty smooth moving application as well, update. There's a couple of reasons why. One, at the bottom, this graphic system that has been updated now, vision of 2022 shown on the left in this image, and the one on the right for a new entry for the 3D config dialog box, gives us the ability for fast shade mode, which takes the ability of updated graphics cards, multiple cores, CPUs, to be able to make better use of cross-platform abilities, okay? There's also another one, viewport performance for section viewports. It's called the ACC viewport opt, what you see there. What that says is in a section viewport, anything outside of that viewport is not even regened. Okay, so when working with plots, when working with switching between layouts, anything outside that viewport is ignored. Okay, even in a profile and section view viewport, anything outside of that station range is ignored. It's not even regen until you go to a viewport that's applicable to that range. Okay, I already mentioned how fast the event viewer is. You get COGO points from corridors, section views. Okay, that section view and sample line editing also is much faster as well. That has been something I've noticed firsthand a lot of times when working with drawings that's got a number of sample lines and a large number of section views. Tends to even open slower, okay, in previous versions. Now that moves a lot faster because of a lot of under the hood parsing that's going on within the drawing database, okay? So very, very good stuff there. As I mentioned before, just kind of jumped into it, threw it out there. Dynamo, for those who are into the programming interface, the core has been upgraded to 2.13. Also for Sheet Set Manager for web is available when working with Autodesk Docs. Things you can do in there is publish, transmit, create and remove sheets and subsets, and there's the data locking, which must be there in order to ascertain who has ownership of certain sheets at the time of access, okay? There's many, many more fixes and improvements, renamings, different enhancements. I've got like on another screen in which I know if I point out any one of them, I'm opening the door for like a ton of other things to follow up in there. But there's a lot that is well documented in terms of their fixes. Okay, so there are fixes from previous releases. Okay, various issues that were realized, whether it's stability or just the simple performance of particular commands or features. Okay, and as I mentioned, a lot of renamings to kind of, well, some renamings, not a lot, let me take that back, but some notable renamings that keep everything in line in terms of the continuity of the application. Okay, that's all I've got for you, some of the higher level items. So that ends what I have for this portion. At this point, we can start addressing some of these questions.